Welcome back to Living It Away. Disciplining your child is so different now than it was with some of us were children ourselves. There's a fine line in some cases, and it's the topic of our Straight Talk with Edwina and Risa. Thank you guys for being here.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Disciplining your child, there really is a fine line. It's different nowadays. But can you tell us a little bit about discipline?
Sure. So discipline in its original form is the practice of training people to abide by rules or a code of conduct. And it is rooted in meanings of teaching and learning. In terms of children, it's teaching them what behaviors are appropriate or what behaviors are not appropriate. And in its purest form, however, discipline is really about educating and providing information and the scaffolding with which children can make better choices. Ultimately, we want them to be functioning, independent members of society and being able to, really regulate themselves and their behavior.
There is no handbook for this. All of us as parents learn as we go. So let's let some of our viewers know that maybe not be parents or may think that there's a better way. What is the goal of disciplining?
You know, the goal of discipline, especially as a parent, is to really improve the behaviors of the children, but also helping them to make better choices overall. And it really starts with us being as parents first, to really manage and maintain our own emotions and our feelings as well, too, so that we are really the first models first for our children. What it's not meant to shame or degrade or guilt a child or coerce them to behave a certain way. And really, like Luisa said earlier, it really is educational. And as kids are well informed and as they're learning and understanding things better, they can make better choices.
Yeah, it's definitely a learning experience for everybody. I think everybody involved, the discipliner and the disciplinee. But how can discipline be taught?
There's a number of different tools and ways to teach. One of them is the obvious, which is providing consequences, and which is meant to change behavior into more appropriate behavior. Also the opposite, which is rewards, and that is to promote and encourage more of the same types of behavior. Also positive reinforcement, just the idea of praise and really giving words of encouragement to your child. Edwina mentioned modeling, and then ultimately building a relationship with your child so that that love and support that they feel will encourage them to take heed and buy into what you're saying as a parent.
What about consequences?
So consequences should be age and developmentally appropriate as well as time sensitive. We shouldn't, for example, ground a child forever. Additionally, we want to really be able to encourage more of the same type of behavior, and so we want a balance of consequences and rewards. That's really what we would encourage.
I have a question for you guys. Two parents, married, have children. There's that situation, okay, because they're learning together. Two families coming together to join one family, there's different parenting styles. How then do you deal with that?
Absolutely.
No, absolutely. So there's actually 3 different types of parenting styles that are out there. So they're authoritative, authoritarian, and permissive. So the first one, authoritative, is really the most ideal type of parenting to do. This type of parent sets clear expectations and boundaries with their child. And even though they may be firm with their expectations, they're also flexible. They also value the relationship that they have with the child as well, too. The second one is authoritarian. So they may have also clear expectations of the child and clear consequences, but they tend to be more rigid and more task-oriented.
Okay.
The third, permissive, is that type of parent actually provides very little discipline for their child, and they're in a situation oftentimes where their child runs them over, and oftentimes the child might be the one who calls the shots on things, and the parent becomes more actually of a friend rather than a parent to that child.
What's the best way for parents to come up with a good way, a good form of discipline?
Well, fortunately, there are a lot of resources that are out today, including books and different websites that people can access. In addition, they really should talk to their friends, learn what other people are doing and get some ideas for that. And then they can also talk to a professional, a licensed marriage and family therapist, for example, or someone who deals with families and who can teach about that. Our center offers that service, and they can call us at 375-7712 or go to www.hookollc.com.
It's Straight Talk about disciplining your child. Thank you guys so much for being here.
Thanks,
Thank you.